yet to perfect the art of a red-eye flight, so when we arrived in Miami, I was freaking exhausted, okay? But I was ready for a beautiful drive down to the Keys, and instead, we were greeted with torrential downpours. But nothing was going to stop us. So we ate a really delicious breakfast, sent up a request for the rain to clear, and made our way down to Key Largo, where by the grace of God, we were able to check into our hotel room incredibly early. But boy, was that drive down rough with tired eyes. This motel may have looked modest from the outside, but the grounds were really beautiful, so we started by putting our things in the hotel room and taking a little stroll to explore. When we made it down to the private beach, the water was incredibly clear, so I started looking for things right away, which gave me a little bump of energy. If you know me, I always have a waterproof case on my phone for exactly this reason. So I stuck it in the water to capture this little fish, a sea blob, a snail that was really cruising across the rock wall, and some really interesting looking sea anemones, which I happened to spot hiding in a little crevice. These little lizards were also all over the place, and I think their little curled tails are hilarious. The fresh air was definitely helping us feel more alive, but we knew that if we were going to make it through the day without absolutely crashing out, then we were going to need at least a little bit of a nap. So while my mom and I opted for beds in the room, Grace wanted to snooze by the water, and honestly, I can't blame her. Once we were revived, there was more adventuring to do, so we braved the rain again and went to John Pennekamp Coral Reef State Park to see what we could find. The water was a little brisk, but we jumped right into the designated swimming area. As you can see, the visibility was less than ideal, so that limited where we could go, but we started off by finding this really big crab, eating some lunch, as well as a variety of fish and some spaghetti worms. To be completely honest with you, I was a little bummed that we didn't see more. We came down to the Keys for the marine life and thought a Coral Reef State Park would be the perfect place to see something really amazing. It was low tide and getting hard to snorkel in some areas, so we decided to try a new spot that had a lot more seagrass out by the mangrove trees. I don't know how she did it, but my sister did spot this decorator crab going to town among the grass. When we got closer to the mangrove trees, it was really interesting to take an up-close look at the roots and do our best to see all the fish that like to chill out in there. If I were a fish, that seems like a place that I would really like to be. When we got out of the water, I was really disappointed to see all the microplastics along the shore. This is becoming a huge problem along beaches around the world, but I've never personally seen a beach with so many microplastics. Being in the water is exhausting, and we were starving, so we picked up some Thai food and headed back to our beach to enjoy a dinner and make an attempt to catch the sunset. Even though the rain clouds precluded us from seeing really any color, it was still a lovely night to do a little reading. We're going to be traveling along the coast for the next 3 weeks, so thank you for joining us for day one. It's time to go to bed. I am the most anxious scuba diver you will ever meet, and today we were getting in the water, so I spent the morning editing and getting mentally prepared while G did her workout. Turns out, working towards being an Olympic athlete takes a lot of dedication. Who knew? I was cheering her on when all of a sudden I spotted an iguana and was wowed. Little did I know, they are all over the place down here in the Keys. As we were pulling away from the park, we surprised a whole bunch of them, and they went running into the trees. I didn't know they could do that, and watching them sprint up the trunks so quickly was incredibly impressive. Now, if you've never been scuba diving before, it takes a lot of energy, so we obviously had to fuel up and get ready for our big afternoon. We were going out with sailfish for 2 dives, and these did not disappoint. I did, however, make a rookie mistake. A few Christmases ago, Grace gave me a dive case for my phone, and this was my first time using it. I should have tested it out before taking it diving for the first time, but it just slipped my mind and unfortunately started to malfunction as we descended. I suspected this was the case, but crossed my fingers and hoped for the best. The best did not happen, but neither did the worst. My phone is just fine. I just didn't get to capture any footage. So everyone say a big thank you to Grace because 99% of this footage is from her. The Benwood wreck was really, really cool. It was huge and had a lot of really vibrant sea life. We descended just a little ways away from the ship and then swam all the way across the wreckage. The ship itself is not that deep. I think we maxed out at like 45 feet, so we got to spend quite a bit of time exploring. I was so pleasantly surprised. Our big finds were a cute little sea turtle and a large grouper. Part of being an anxious diver is working on controlling air supply, so I was really proud to report I did a great job and did not cause the group to return to the boat before it was necessary. So pumped to jump right into the second dive on the French Reef. I was so excited about what we saw after the first dive that I switched out my iPhone dive housing for my GoPro and pulled yet another rookie mistake. GoPros cannot handle the pressure of scuba diving without dive housing, so once we descended, it malfunctioned and took 1,157 random still photographs. But once we swam to a section of the reef that was a little more shallow, I was able to get control of the camera again and take some video. In my opinion, scuba diving is the closest feeling you can get to floating without going into space, so we always appreciate the whale experience to the fullest extent. This reef was really big and had a good variety of fish. We even found this lobster hiding away in a little crevice. This ended up being a really long dive exploring the reef, and I was enjoying it so much I completely forgot to keep an eye on my air. When I looked down at my gauge, I saw I only had 600 pounds of air left, and we were not back at the boat. For context, it's typical to be back at the line and ascending with 500 pounds of air left in your tank, so I went straight to Megan, our guide, to alert her of the situation, and she brought us to the surface. To be fair, we were submerged for 54 minutes, so I still did really well without gulping down my air supply super early. We weren't terribly far from the boat, so we flipped onto our backs and did a little surface swim. When we got back, I was completely exhausted and ready to enjoy the beautiful ride back home. As you can see, the water is so blue. I was able to spot a turtle coming up for air, but no dolphins. After our dive, we returned to the shop to rinse our equipment, and we were surprised by a visit from the shop dog. We could not wait to get some food, so we headed to dinner and then found ourselves a sweet little treat at a Cuban bakery. Taking these treats back to our beach and enjoying them while watching the sunset was so ideal. If you thought we were completely recovered from our red-eye flight yesterday, you would be super wrong, because we went back to our room and crashed immediately. We are on a 3-week road trip, which means that sometimes we need to work along the way, and this was one of those mornings. I have never been a coffee gal, but this morning I became a convert because of the Cuban coffee at this delicious bakery. If I'm going to drink it, it needs to be sweet, and this was right up my alley. My mom had driven by this giant lobster earlier in the trip, and we decided we absolutely had to go back. Turns out there's a really cool artist market hidden behind the souvenir shop, so we took a quick look around before continuing south to Marathon to grab some lunch. Our motel has kayaks the guests can use at their leisure, so we went out in search of manatees and sadly came up short, but had a great time paddling around and doing some casual yacht shopping. It was a fine line trying to launch ourselves into the water without slipping on the algae and moss growing on the boat ramp. Somehow we managed to succeed. We came across some fishermen who had just returned and were cleaning up their catch. They tried to scare us by saying it's common for sharks to frequent the area when they start to throw in the entrails, but that only made us want to stick around and see the excitement. However, we figured being in the kayaks was likely not the best way to do that. On the way back, we took the path through the mangroves and it was really peaceful. Grace found some rope floating in the water nearby and was able to pull it out. We got back just in time to do a quick freshwater rinse and go to 7 Mile Bridge. We had high hopes of being able to see sharks from above, and while we didn't get to see any sharks, we had a great time spotting tons of other things like massive spotted eagle rays, turtles, and plenty of tarpon. The conditions were perfect for us to be able to see really deep into the water as the sun was going down, and we could have stayed there for hours and hours had it not gotten dark. This sunset was one of the best I've ever seen, but fair warning, if you go, be sure to bring your bug spray because the mosquitoes were eating us alive. I had no idea what this day would have in store for us when I was writing in my little journal, but my expectations were completely blown out of the water. We started out the day by taking Grace to do her workout and then heading straight down to Bahia Honda. If you're in the Keys, you must add this beach to your to-do list. Even though there was a lot of seaweed on the beach, we were there for one reason and one reason only: finding Queen Conch. We started off by walking in the water, but it really was only sand. We spotted a couple of rays swimming by and decided the best course of action was to put on our snorkel gear and head out further into the water. Bingo. There were so many queen conchs we didn't know what to do with ourselves. These animals are federally protected, so while we spent a lot of time admiring them, we gave each one a little kiss on the forehead before putting it back on the ocean floor to live a long and happy life. In addition to whispering sweet nothings to the conch, we got to play with the other fish who were swimming in the area, including a bunch of barracuda. When I've been swimming around barracuda in the past, I've really only seen one at a time, but there were at least 5 or 6 in this general area. Just as I was getting ready to turn around, I spotted 2 rays hanging out together right near a turtle. Turns out, I was crashing a little party. I could have spent all day there, but we had reservations to go on a snorkel tour to Sombrero Reef, and we could not be late, so we packed up our things and rushed to meet the boat. Thank God we did, because you're never going to guess what Grace saw the minute she got in the water. 1 second Grace was jumping into the water, and the next second she was yelling shark. If you know us, this is a good thing, but I was convinced no one else was going to get in the water after she made this announcement. I was too late to see the shark, but we went about our business snorkeling around Sombrero Reef anyway. What a beautiful reef. Most of the formations were only about 20 feet deep, and in crystal clear water, it was really easy to see everything below us. The tour we went on required us to wear these little life vests, but that didn't stop us from diving deeper to get a close look at the fish. As we were swimming around, we were putting out hopeful vibes, and sure enough, the shark came back. It was really cool to be able to observe this nurse shark up close and personal as she swam by peacefully. Most of the people from our tour were back on the boat already, so we were some of the only guests to have the opportunity to see her. We were squealing with delight. The second stop on our tour this afternoon was a sandbar, and I'm gonna be honest, my expectations were low. Once we were out and about, it was really nice to hang out in bath temperature water and watch all the little crabs nearby. What is there to complain about blue water and white sand? To finish off, we went and played on the mat the first mate put out. Unfortunately, they would not tow us back to the shore while we rode the mat off the back of the boat, but it was worth an ask. We didn't have plans to stay down in Key West at all during this trip, but wanted to head down just to check it out, so we spent the evening wandering. It had been a long day, so Cuban coffee was necessary before enjoying our dinner and visiting the southernmost point of the United States.
Happy birthday, dear Susie. Happy birthday to you. Thank you, Krista. Yay!
We had a turtle hospital to get to this morning, so we hustled through G's workout and then ran back to the 7 Mile Bridge to see if we could see anything else exciting in the water. The tarpon were really active at the surface, and I also spotted these really long fish that I couldn't quite identify, but they were really fun to watch. And then we headed to the main event of the day. My dad's side of the family holds a reunion on the Crystal Coast of North Carolina every year, and when I was younger, I always looked forward to going to the behind-the-scenes tours at the Pine Knoll Shores Aquarium. Without fail, my favorite part every time was the sea turtle rehabilitation. It's really incredible how these biologists are able to help the injured turtles and release many of them back into the wild. The Marathon Turtle Hospital is just as amazing. In the past, I've seen turtles who have had shark bites, were hit by boats, have buoyancy issues, or have become cold stunned because of the low temperatures. But one thing I'd never seen before is a turtle with tumors, and this absolutely broke my heart. The green sea turtles in the area developed tumors because of the fertilizer being washed into the ocean from agricultural runoff. Luckily, the hospital works with some very skilled surgeons who are able to remove many of these tumors from the captured turtles, but this is a growing issue that could be really detrimental to the green sea turtle population as a whole. I don't generally like to pick favorites, but the turtle who stuck out to me the most was Lefty. He was missing an eye as well as a flipper, and yet it didn't seem to deter him one bit. He was greeting the guests like it was his job, and let's be honest, it is. The hospital also takes in hatchlings, and it was so much fun to see these tiny little turtles in their tanks. Across the board, the goal is rehabilitation and release, but sometimes that's just not feasible because of the limitations the turtles have. When they can't be cleared for re-release into the wild, they fall into one of two categories: non-releasable or permanent resident. These may sound like the same thing, but permanent residents stay at the hospital for the rest of their lives, whereas non-releasable turtles go live at other institutions like aquariums. I generally did not think this day could get any better. Unfortunately, it was time to leave the Keys, so we picked up some coffee and broke up our drive north to Marco Island with some lunch. We arrived just in time for sunset, and if you thought the tiny turtles were cute, wait until you saw what we found on this beach. Every step we took on this beach kept getting more and more interesting. I cannot believe what we found. We drove 4 hours up to Marco Island just in time to catch the sunset, and at first we were a little underwhelmed. The beach itself was a little slimy near the water, and we almost turned around before we noticed all of these holes. Once we looked a little further ahead, we saw crabs. Lots of them. This wasn't enough to completely convince us to stay, but we said we'd keep going for 10 minutes because why not? As we walked along, we saw these really interesting patterns in the sand, seemingly made by hundreds of snails. Then we started finding shells, and that was enough to keep us hooked. We found beautiful empty shells, and then we found shells who still had their inhabitants, and they were really active, both moving across the sand and also with each other. But the absolute highlight of the night was stumbling upon the tiniest horseshoe crabs I've ever seen. They were cruising around all over the place, and I could not get over how cute they were. Have you ever held an animal that literally roamed the earth with dinosaurs and is absolutely adorable? Didn't think so. Once we realized the little horseshoe crabs were all over the place, I was really worried about stepping on them by accident, but my marine biologist sister reminded me that they're literally living fossils and were built to survive. We also found a small inhabited whelk and the remnants of an egg case, but these were just cherries on top of an already incredible evening. The only thing I love more than a beach is a great surprise, and tonight delivered both. I never want to see the butt crack of dawn unless you say that we're getting on a boat, and then I'm all over it. Today was a boat day, and we were on a mission to find shells so beautiful and interesting they would make Ariel herself jealous, okay? So we took a lovely boat ride and knew it was going to be a good day when we saw dolphins. As soon as we got to our little island, we put our noses down into the sand. We were told that all along the right shore would be our best opportunity to find intact shells, and if we wanted to find sand dollars, we should wade into the water about 20 feet offshore. We were not the only ones on this shelling tour, and I get competitive, so we had to be strategic. We decided that we were going to intentionally skip the first section of beach so we could spread out along the shore and be the first ones to touch the far side of the island. This was, of course, very difficult because no matter how hard we tried to avert our eyes and keep walking, we continued to find amazing shells. I can guarantee you that everyone came away happy from this trip. Even though we have found sand dollars in other places, I can't help it. I'm a sand dollar fan, and I got into the water to start looking. I wasn't having any luck until
I found one!
And once I found the first one, the other ones weren't too far away. This inspired Grace to go level 10 shell finder and jump all the way into the water with her mask. It's really important to check out each of the shells to make sure you're not accidentally bringing home a little creature, so we were extra careful to double check everything we picked up. I was surprised at the ratio of empty shells to inhabited shells. We saw very few residents along this beach. We did pick up this egg casing on our way back to the boat. They always remind me of snakeskin, and when they're full, they have hundreds of tiny whelks inside. This one was empty, which means that all of the little whelks were successfully hatched into the ocean. Back on the boat, we did a quick survey of our finds, but we couldn't get too comfortable because we had another island to explore. Stepping onto this island made me feel like I was in Star Wars, Dune, or some other high-concept sci-fi adventure movie, and when you see why, I think you'll agree with me. I even had to go sport mode on my Crocs. The point of the island pretty much gives standard beach until you turn the corner and boom! Dolly painting. The shells were just piled up on the shore in such massive amounts, it made it difficult to navigate, especially around the big tree roots, but who am I to complain about a boatload of shells and what will no doubt be an epic adventure? We got straight to work using our various techniques. I tend to be pretty picky. I know what I like, but I love to be surprised, so it either needs to be one of my favorite shells in perfect condition, or something I've never seen before and become enamored with immediately. My mom is a lover, so she will take in anything that looks like it belongs in a home. Now, don't get this twisted, she doesn't shell like a toddler who just picks up anything and everything. Notice I said belongs in a home, not needs a home. So anything that looks very cool but could be a little broken, well, that's okay. We'll just arrange it for display in a way that covers up the broken part, and it's a win-win for everyone. Ultimately, she shells in bulk, and that's her prerogative. My sister approaches her shelling technique somewhere in between these two. We were finding some really cool shells all along the shore. My sister even found an intact sand dollar in one of the piles, which was a genuine miracle considering the terrain these shells had to cross to get there. When we got back to the boat, our lovely captain pulled out his treasure chest to show us some of his all-time great finds, and wow, they were incredible. Now that we realize what we could have found out there, we will definitely be booking a trip back to go round 2 immediately. Our shelling tour concluded by taking the long way back to the dock. It's so nice to be able to sip on some cold water and feel the wind through your hair on the way back from a long morning of being bent over. At this point, it was only 10 o'clock, so we decided to head to breakfast when we were stopped by the cutest little owls I have ever seen. We saw the signs for low-flying owls when we arrived the night before, but I immediately thought tree nesting owls instead of burrowing owls. Breakfast was delicious, but we all ended up crying with laughter after a small salt mishap over my mom's omelet. It's another travel day, so we quickly gave our shells a little rinse and then packed up our treasures to go. Does 72-degree water sound warm to you? Because on this summer day, I thought it would be nice, but it ended up being really brisk. I pretty much avoid having to put on a wetsuit at all costs, but today I was glad I had it because it really helped me brave the cold water and swim with these little guys. Now, swim is actually an inaccurate word for what we were doing. We were merely floating and observing. Manatees are protected by both federal and state law, so you cannot approach or pursue them in any way, but you can get in the water and let curiosity get the better of these giant potatoes. And curious they were, especially this calf who clearly was looking for a friend. Of course, Gracie is cool, calm, and collected around all marine life and did not mind one bit that our manatee tried to use her as a scratching post. When we first arrived to the site, we were the only ones there. It was so peaceful, and we could see the manatees swimming through the water because it was so clear. As the morning progressed, more and more boats showed up. I assumed they were there to also see the manatees, but it turned out they were just looking for a place to stop and jump in the water. As we were exiting, our captain was chatting with a couple of the surrounding boats, and it seemed like they had no idea what they had stumbled upon. Imagine sitting in an inner tube when all of a sudden a 900-pound potato decides to come sniff your bum out of curiosity. What a way to start the morning! There's a section of water that is completely restricted from humans and watercraft, and this is to give the manatees an opportunity to get some private time if they feel they need it. So they're well taken care of. Overall, it was an absolutely magical day with the manatees and worth wiggling into the wetsuit. We are at the final preview day of Epic Universe before it opens to the public on May 22nd. We're here! And we're rating every ride we ride. First ride of the day! Okay, Hiccup Swing Gliders. I say 8 out of 10.
I say 7 out of 10.
9 out of 10, great theming.
7 out of 10. I love that they clapped for you when you ended because I felt special.
Okay, 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10, great theming.
I have no idea what we're doing. Stardust Racers.
I'm scared.
Whoa. We just got off Stardust Racers. We're rating it 100 out of 10.
9 out of 10, almost too much.
10 out of 10, and because when you get off a ride and you can barely stand up because you're so dizzy, that is a good ride.
Yeah!
10 out out of 10, no notes, perfection.
Yeah!
10 out of 10.
100 out of 10.
10 out of 10.
Wait,
I thought Abby Lee was in jail.
And then she got into music now.
Okay, Monsters Unchained, 6 out of 10 for me.
7 out of 10. 7 out of 10, but great air conditioning.
5. 9 out of 10, visually stunning.
7, very standard.
6, because the theming was really good, but the ride experience was just kind of blasé.
Agreed. I'm so excited.
Now my Irish step dance song isn't on.
Apologizes for the inconvenience and will keep you informed for further developments. Thank you.
Attention ministry visitors, the Department of Magical Maintenance is pleased to announce
The little bald elves. What are they? Oh no. It's like,
We made it.
Just through that door, there's the stairs.
Thank you.
sad.
Here we go. The carousel, I'm gonna say 7 out of 10.
6. It should have played Pink Pony Club. 7 out of 10. My kids straddled each other on a single animal.
4 out of 10, but I was able to ride a bull, and since I'm Taurus, that felt good.
Wow. 6 out of 10.
7 out of 10.
4 out of 10. Too long to load.
6 out of 10.
Mario Kart, I give it an 8 out of 10. A little bit confusing, but ultimately fun.
8 out of 10 as well. 8 out of 10. No clue what was going on. Be fun.
6 out of 10, it was very overwhelming.
7 out of 10. Aiming is real hard.
6 out of 10.
5 out of 10, because it was a lot of fun, it was immersive, but for some reason, I just didn't score a lot of points. I don't
Paging Dr. B. Emergency, emergency.
What? Okay.
Dragon Rally Racers, I did not swing and I thought it was only 6 out of 10.
Oh, I thought it was an 8 and it would have been a 9 if I could get the momentum. 5 out of 10, way too short.
Way too short, 5 out of 10.
5 out of 10, but I tried to barrel roll and I couldn't.
6 out of 10. Too short, couldn't barrel roll.
6 out of 10. 4 out of 10.
Last ride of the day, we are getting on Donkey Kong.
Mine cart madness.
Donkey Kong Mine Train. It was a little bumpy, but I actually really enjoyed it. So I'm giving it an 8 out of 10.
I think I'll give it an 8 out of 10. They had some crazy moments where you thought the cart and the track were just ending.
We like it.
What a day! What a day!
This is by far the clearest water I've ever swam in, and it also happens to be 72 degrees, but for some reason this was far more tolerable without wetsuits than yesterday's adventure. When we arrived, I did a quick walk around to survey the area and stumbled across a little otter jumping in for a swim. Obviously, Gracie was already paddling around and figuring out where the best adventure was. We popped on our snorkel gear and headed out to explore the spring itself. The current here is so much stronger than I expected. It's shallow enough to touch, but the algae growing on the rocks is so slick, it makes it really difficult to stand. Gracie did some free diving and reported mud and some more algae, so I decided I didn't necessarily need to see that myself and chose to observe from above. What really surprised me about this spring was all the freshwater fish. From above, they kind of look like leaves or debris floating in the water, but while I was swimming, I realized it was just a giant school. Overall, we really loved this relaxing morning. It was so nice to hang out after the constant go, go, go of the last few weeks.
Disney Day!
We're ready to go! Yeah! We are bad park luck because we're currently being evacuated off of the ride.
Hello? Hello.
All right, and my friends at the front here, you guys are gonna go first.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you. It is.
Oh, everyone's gone. Everyone is gone.
For it. Yep. We are getting a second crack at Toy Story.
Here we go!
I think Disney won!
I think you won.
Oh, it was so close! God bless America. Yeah! I love drinking at Disney.
Getting ready for them to ride Remy's Ratatouille Adventure for the first time. What are your expectations?
Quite high. I love Ratatouille. I love Remy and cheese.
What are your expectations?
Hi.
Reactions?
10 out of 10. I love Ratatouille. It was very cute. And a lot of the time I was like real-time reaction. Like I was like, whoa, wow, whoa. So it was great. Awesome. I love Remy. Still craving cheese.
8 out of 10. It was a little too long of a line.
Oh! Yummy! It's their first time going on Guardians. Tell me what your expectations are.
Quite high. I am very excited. I'm gonna be freaking wowed. Oh, I want to do it again. I was told that. 1,000 out of 10. Gonna do it again. 10,000 out of 10. Best roller coaster ride ever. Who are the drunk-looking bears? Ah, so excited!
Yay! Yes! Here we go! Their first time riding Tron. What are your expectations?
Go like mad. Quite high. I'm very excited.
You're welcome.
Yeah! 100 out of 10. Second only to Guardians. Must buy a bullet bike. needs disco music. Play with the ratchet on your neck.
Double fisting. Here we go.
Love bugs. Oh, come on. Use that big mouth.
No, that was close.
Some man just said it tasted like ass, so I don't believe you. Oh, bitter. You lied! You lied!
This plane is never gonna work.
Conga.
We came for the bathrooms and we stayed for the snacks. This was our first Buc-ee's experience and it did not disappoint one bit. The bathrooms were in fact as clean as we expected them to be, so 10 out of 10 would pee again, but everything else was so much bigger and better. Mom and I headed straight for the bakery to get some treats because at this point we really needed to pick me up in order to convince ourselves to get back in the car, and Gracie went straight to her favorite section, the nuts! Just kidding, she really detests nuts, but she beelined it for the fudge.
Of course I wanted the fudge. I love fudge. I'm getting them.
I thought I knew what to expect and it was not this.
Thank you, Tara. Have a good day.
Here we have our Buc-ee's paddle tail.
Very excited because it looked like something that would totally be part of my wheelhouse. Frosted pastry with cinnamon. Let's see how it tastes. Oh, everything I hoped for and more. Yum. I got the mocha chino fudge. I'm a big fudge girly. Let's go. Boop. It's weird. Coffee fudge. Love.
Chocolate whoopie pie. So very good. Thank you, Buc-ee's.
Thank you, Buc-ee's.
I'm someone who loves plans and loves structure, but sometimes stepping out of your comfort zone pays off, and this was one of those days. We only had 24 hours in Savannah and a really loose idea of what we were going to do, but the little surprises we stumbled upon really exceeded our expectations for this trip. We started off at SCAD, and the exhibits here were so impressive and thought-provoking. My favorite was the final photography exhibit, which was a series of self-portraits using everyday objects as clothing and costume wear. Appreciating art really works up an appetite, so we got these little donuts, and they absolutely hit the spot so we could set off on a stroll around Forsyth Park. This park is really beautiful, and one of our favorite surprises of the day was stumbling upon all these little messages written along the sidewalk, some providing encouragement, some requesting reflection, and one placing a curse on the racist statue, which we absolutely took part in. I was really excited about seeing some architecture, so we continued to wind our way through the surrounding neighborhoods on foot, and the homes we saw were so interesting and varied. We also made a few new friends who were so sweet and friendly. On our walk, we also crossed through some of the public squares, and I have to say, these are really beautiful public spaces. One of them even had a tree with lots of tiny Jesuses inside of it, which was both confusing and amusing. Once our feet had started calling for us to take a break, we swung by the gingerbread house before going to eat some delicious southern food. The only thing we knew we needed to book in advance on this trip was a ghost tour, so we finished up our night walking along River Street before jumping on the bus right around dusk. I have to say, River Street as a whole was pretty underwhelming. I'm willing to say that maybe we didn't know the right places to go, but other than this mushroom hat, it was kind of a bust. But after exploring Savannah all day, we were really excited to hear some stories and see how the city changes at night. If you like ghosts, raise your hand. And now notice that my hand is not raised. I am not opposed to a spirit making itself known if it's friendly, but Savannah was not giving Casper vibes. It was giving revenge, which made me feel uneasy. But despite the less than positive energy, we did what you do in Savannah, went on a ghost tour, and tried to keep it light.
Somebody's watching me.
I'm sure someone else has experienced this, but when I was little, a friend of my mom's was convinced that I was communing with spirits from another realm because little orbs would frequently appear around my head in photographs. I can't say I felt any severe pulls from the supernatural that I can remember, but maybe they're yet to come. A docent of our tour of the Andrew Lowe House claims that when tourists visit, they frequently see the spirits appear in the mirrors of the photos and the videos, sometimes long after they've visited the site. So if you happen to catch an 1800s face seeking vengeance, don't say I didn't warn you. But baby, I gave those ghosts every opportunity to make themselves known to us by documenting every room in the house, so you're welcome. So it turns out we experienced a bit of a phenomenon while visiting Hilton Head. Do you see how much beach is exposed? The changes on this beach over the 6 hours we were there were so severe, I could not believe it. This happened to be a week where the tides were experiencing extremes, so when we first set up our camp, we could tell there was a lot of wet sand, and we chose to keep setting up on the limited dry sand because we knew it was low tide. From where we were, it was about a 10-minute stroll just to reach the water, but we didn't think anything of it because it was our first time there. Lots of beach during low tide is genuinely perfect for us because we love to explore and find as many cool things as possible, and this beach did not disappoint. After rescuing a stray beach ball, we started our hunt, and right off the bat, Gracie happened to catch a fish. I'm telling you, they just come to her naturally. We were always trying to be as prepared as possible, so while Gracie was wielding her net, I brought the strainer and some little digging tools. You never know what you're going to come across. We also found a bunch of washed up jellies, a little crab, some beautiful but inhabited shells, and watched this bird really go at it in the waves. All of a sudden, Gracie was calling to me, telling me she found a turtle, and this got me really excited. I ran straight over and started following it in this little stream of water that was running towards the ocean, and noticed its beautiful shell, but that didn't look like a sea turtle to me. After spotting its pointy nose, I thought it could be a terrapin, but I gave it a quick Google, and the shell makes me think it's a river cooter. So if anyone knows what this little cutie actually is, then please let me know. Other honorable mentions included some really big dried up horseshoe crabs and egg casings. Despite the sign at the entrance to the beach, no alligators. Thank goodness. So I need you to remember how much beach we just had to explore, and this is what it looked like when we left. The water came up so high, I was just in shock at how drastically different it had become. After all that exploring, we were parched and ready to catch a good sunset, so we went to Harbor Town Pier and watched a proposal while the dolphins were going absolutely wild around us. After hearing so much about Hilton Head, I'm really glad we finally got to visit and experience firsthand what other people talk about. If there's anything we missed, I would love to hear recommendations of your favorite things. Rain has never stopped us before, and it was not going to stop us today. We had one day in Charleston and some mansion shopping to do. The sprinkle we experienced in the morning was nothing compared to the absolute deluge that smacked us in the afternoon, but let's just enjoy the blissful ignorance together while we can, shall we? These homes were absolutely stunning. One of my favorite things to do in a new city is find a walking tour to check out the local architecture. While this wasn't a planned walking tour, we did a bit of a Google to find an area that seems like it would be interesting, and it was really successful. Our next stop was shark tooth hunting, but unfortunately a potty break was absolutely necessary.
Oh my gosh, it is over her ankles. Really very wet. I'm gonna piss my overalls.
Gracie tried to run into a coffee shop, but they didn't end up having a bathroom, so we had to go to plan B. After she relieved herself, we went to the beach and the rain continued on and off. Honestly, we were quite glad because we thought it would be better conditions for shark tooth hunting. Fewer people to compete with on the beach and more water moving the sand around. I have to admit, I did make a mistake. I should have just gone out in my swimsuit and jacket, but instead I kept my clothes on, and there's nothing worse than walking around in soaking wet clothes. I truly don't know what I was thinking when I made that choice, but we live and we learn. Our first find was a starfish, which was really unexpected. The research we did told us to search around the pier, and we were really coming up short until Gracie finally found a tooth, and a good one at that. My mom and I continued to hunt, and I was just about to give up when I finally found one as well. Not as big, but I will take what I can get. In addition to the 2 shark teeth, we found a handful of other very beautiful shells. We took our tiny treasures with us, and even though the rain had stopped, the roads had still not cleared, and we were really grateful we had rented an SUV. The goal was to eat a quick lunch, dinner, whatever meal you eat at 3:30 p.m. and keep exploring, but the rain decided it was going to come back, so we decided to cut our losses and dry off in our hotel room. I don't want to hear it about the bags, okay? We know. When you're on a 3-week road trip, some days are simply travel days, and today was one of them. We had 5.5-hour drive ahead of us, and no, I was not excited. On a long drive like this, we try to take our time in the morning, so I did a workout, ate some breakfast, and then we packed up the car and hit the road. Now, I'd like to take a poll. If you see a complete stranger who happens to be a young woman walking into a hotel where you are sitting in the lobby and they have a full rolling cart of baggage, do you A, mind your own business, B, greet them politely and go on about your night, or C, ask them how many nights they're staying here because, and I quote, "that's a lot of shit." One man at our hotel chose option C, and even though I politely laughed him off, I wanted to ask if he was raised in a barn. This is not the first road trip the 3 of us have done over the multiple weeks, and you would be shocked at how many men choose to share their unsolicited thoughts with us about how much baggage we are bringing into the hotel. That's beautiful.
We have arrived.
Yay!
We have arrived.
After a long day cooped up in the car, we needed to blow off some steam. So we took our cabin fever to the local Mexican restaurant and partied like all 3 of us had the same birthday, and it was today. Then a miracle happened, and my sister actually came over to cuddle with me for 30 seconds. I'm the physical touch sibling, and she is the get away from me sibling. So for posterity, I had to include this documentation.
So much joy.
Oh no!
Okay, there we go.
Today we're taking the ferry to Ocracoke Island and we are praying the weather holds up. At this point, it was not looking promising, but we were in line for the ferry and had a hotel reservation waiting for us when we arrived. Even though the distance from Cedar Island to Ocracoke doesn't look that far on a map, we were going to be on the ferry for 2.5 hours, so I wanted to stretch my legs before settling in for a long sit. Strolling on the beach, I found a few very beautiful shells and a lot of jellyfish. As always, I'm staying far away from these bad boys because I am not knowledgeable enough to accurately identify which jellies these are, but I know that many keep their sting long after they've washed up, and I was not going to take that chance. As we were getting closer to takeoff, I headed back to the car and we loaded up. These ferry workers have this down to a science. We had barely driven onto the ferry when the gate was closed and we were moving. I'm not normally one who gets seasick, but I was feeling a little iffy after doing some reading, so I opted for a little nap to finish out our time. When I opened my eyes, we were driving off the ferry and I was feeling much better. We dropped off our things at the hotel and kept on cruising since the sky was continuing to keep us dry. We said hello to the ponies and headed straight to the beach. Surprise, surprise. The tide was super low, so we decided to fan out, and I was walking through the water when all of a sudden this beautiful sand dollar showed itself. This is pure luck right here, and I was so excited. I found a second smaller one right around the time my sister plucked a sand dollar off the beach higher up, and then I was lucky enough to find a third one not too long after. Jellies on this beach also mean jellies in the water, so as I was strolling, I was making sure to keep a close eye on what was coming towards me as the waves rolled in. After all, I would hate to have to beg my sister to pee on my leg after getting stung. Okay, that was a joke. Please do your research if you get stung by a jellyfish before anyone does any peeing. I also found an additional tiny sand dollar, but decided to put it back since its middle was not intact. Since we were covering as much beach as possible, Gracie took off ahead of us and ended up finding the absolute jackpot. Not one, but 2 Scotch bonnets. They both had inhabitants, so she put them back into the water so they could continue to thrive. But how beautiful are those shells? After a few hours, the tide was coming back in and we were ready to call it quits, so we did a quick show and tell of what we each found in the trunk of the car. Looks like we all found some gorgeous scallops during this hunt. I have to admit, they are some of my favorite shells to find. On our way back to town, we swung by the lighthouse and I learned a very important lesson. Even though something may be called a horrific name like swamp rat, the animal could actually look very cute. These guys were so furry and hilarious to watch snack. We could hear the crunching loud and clear. Although the lighthouse itself was a little underwhelming, apparently this is one of the oldest operating lighthouses in the United States and the oldest operating lighthouse in North Carolina. Ocracoke is so small that we decided to keep risking the rain and walk to dinner, which took us about 5 minutes to do. We were ravenous and this food was as delicious as it looked, so we made short work of it and then headed back home to send up all our wishes for another dry day tomorrow. After some really intense weather, we finally saw some blue sky and our boat captain dropped us off on a desolate island and said, "See you in a few hours," and that's exactly what we paid him to do. We were ready to search for what we consider the holy grail, Scotch bonnets. Not 5 minutes into the walk around the point of the island, I reached into the water and plucked one out. We took this as an excellent sign and our luck only grew from there.
White Scotch bunny.
Ooh. Even though we were really dedicated to the Scotch bonnet hunt, there was so much to find, like this moon snail. You can see that at first I thought it was just a beautiful shell, and then I realized the snail was still attached. So instead of adding him to my collection, I just observed him dig into the sand for a few minutes before saying goodbye and good luck. I mistakenly was looking down by the water, but the real place to be looking was 20 to 30 feet before the foliage and the dunes. Once we moved up there, we were on a roll.
Yay! My holy grail shell.
However, this did mean having to contend with some pretty serious horseflies, and they were super aggressive. And the thing about searching for shells is that you really have to get down and be curious. Carefully digging things out of the sand is the name of the game, and sometimes it's just a fragment, but other times you get lucky and it's perfectly intact. I kept finding broken pieces of Scotch bonnets with the most beautiful coloring I'd ever seen. I thought I was just picking up another piece until... Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Cue This Is What Dreams Are Made Of from the Lizzie McGuire movie, because it really does not get any better than this. In addition to the Scotch bonnets, I came across this egg casing which had been dried up and caught in some little sticks. I've always had a soft spot for these cute little baby ear shells. I don't know what it is about them, but they just look so perfect to me, and I saw some different color variations I'd never found before. Now, of course, we all understand my obsession with sand dollars, but can you blame me? They're each so unique in their thickness and pattern. It genuinely makes me sad to see the broken pieces, but this is a prime example of how delicate these little guys actually are. After attempting to simply brush some sand off the surface of this piece, it cracked right in my hands. It truly is a miracle that any make it to the shore intact. Our time on the island flew by, but on our way back to the boat, I snagged one more colorful Scotch bonnet. I just found another really beautiful one. Ah! I can't believe was showing Gracie my final treasure, she showed me what we believe to be a small vial of human remains. Unclear, but definitely weren't expecting to find anything like that on this trip. The boat came back to pick us up, and we got a quick tour of the Ocracoke coastline before taking our treasures and celebrating the best way we know how.
Hello.
With ice cream. But our day wasn't over yet. We ran back to the car and drove to the beach because we had a campfire to enjoy. After an incredibly successful day at Portsmouth Island, we celebrated with a fire on the beach, one of my all-time favorite things. Before the sun went down, I did a little exploring and saw a bunch of clams and then stumbled upon these cute little sand sculptures, which I thought were so creative. I wish I could have seen them before the tide got to them. And speaking of, something else caught my attention in the waves. Initially, I thought it was trash, but it turned out to be a Portuguese man-of-war jelly. Big yikes. I'd never seen one of those in person, and the colors are beautiful, but I stayed far away because I did not know where those tentacles were, and I was not going to risk it. If you've never done a fire on the beach, then this needs to go on your list immediately. There are two things that I consider to be incredibly hypnotizing: watching flames of a fire and listening to waves at the beach. Put those two together, and I am in a complete trance all night long. When people say go to your happy place, this is where I am, okay? To make it even better, I got a hug from my non-physical touch sister, and then we roasted some marshmallows. Being on the road together for weeks at a time comes with its ups and downs. It definitely causes us to get on each other's nerves, but it also provides the opportunity for a lot of quality time and adventures I could not be more grateful for. It's not lost on me how lucky I am to not only get along with my family, but have the opportunity to spend this time together. Having an evening to reflect and decompress amidst all of this is key to a successful trip for us, and this was the perfect place to do it. As we were admiring the stars, something caught our eye, and the ghost crabs had come out to play. They were really brave and were getting a little too close for our comfort, but they must have known it was time for us to head out, so we smothered our fire and called it a night. We got so many recommendations for Eduardo's, so on our last morning in Ocracoke, we went there for breakfast, and it was delicious. After we loaded all our bags in the car, this little guy caught our eye, and since he was so far from the water, we decided to intervene and get him back home.
Hi, little friend! We're taking you back to the water, my friend.
It's gonna be okay.
Before sitting in the car for multiple hours, we needed to get a little walk in, so we headed to Springer's Point and did the nature trail. Even though there were quite a few bugs, it was really nice to spend some time outside and enjoy nature. I don't think I fully appreciated how small Ocracoke was before coming here. It's hard for me to imagine living on an island you have to commute to and from by ferry. Everything else seems so far away, but maybe that's the point. Speaking of ferry, we are continuing north on our road trip, and whereas the first ferry we took allows for reservations, this one did not, and we were the second to last car allowed on. Thank goodness we made it, because otherwise it would have set back our entire plan for the day. Speaking of, any ideas? Let me give you a hint. It requires a helmet, a harness, and a long walk up to the top of the sand dunes. Oh my. I have done a lot of cool things in my life, but this for sure makes at least the top 10. Today we went hang gliding for the first time, and guaranteed we will be back. This experience started with us getting suited up and walking all the way up to the top of the dunes where we would be meeting the rest of the team and taking off. Believe it or not, we actually tried to do this a few years ago and made it all the way to the top of the dune, but when the instructor did the demo flight, he completely face planted into the sand, which did not inspire confidence in the rest of us, so they ended up canceling the lesson due to insufficient wind. Luckily, when Kyle took off today, he soared like a bird, which meant that we were next, and like any good big sister, I let my little sister go first, and she nailed it. Gracie and I are the perfect yin-yang pair. She is super adventurous, and I am super cautious. But watching her be brave inspired me to be brave, and thank God, because this was freaking rad. Kyle and Bird were our instructors, and they really made this experience as ideal as possible. Not only did I feel completely safe the entire time because of Kyle's step-by-step instruction, but Bird was my personal hype person. The goal is always to flare and land on your feet, and sometimes that happens, and sometimes it doesn't. I definitely did a few penguin slides, but they were actually quite fun. The wind died about halfway through our lesson, but we persisted and still were able to get some good height despite the less than ideal conditions. There's also something about being on top of these sand dunes that makes you feel like you're on another planet, and that makes the whole experience even more cool. After the lesson, we all met back up at the picnic table to fill out our flight logs. When we left, it was time to check into our hotel, and we were appalled to see that someone had brought a dead horseshoe crab into the hotel. If you're ever thinking about doing something like that, don't. Gracie still wanted to get a workout in, so my mom and I walked to the beach and collected some trash while she did some sprints, and we ended just as the sun was setting. Today we're going hang gliding for the first time.
No!
Today we're going
Hang gliding!
and I don't expect it to go well. Okay, off we go.
Take flight.
What's up, guys?
You little freaks. There we go. Not tight. I need you to fly a little bit more, my little friend. There we go.
And then lay down. We lay down before every flight.
Oh my.
We are clear. Walk. Strong. Run. Lay down. Yeah. Stay right there. Stay right there. Stay right there. Stay right there. And ease out, flare. Woo!
That was so fun! Woo! And one done. That was so fun.
So good.
Flare. Oh.
But that was kind of fun.
There you are. There you are.
Woo!
Yeah. Stay there. Flare.
That one was awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Yay! All right.
How does it feel to fly?
It was awesome. Woo! That was so fun.
Awesome. Sand in my eyeball.
Would recommend. What a pleasant surprise. We just happened to be in town the same weekend that the Jackalope Festival was happening, and we're always down for a good time. So we headed out to the beachfront with low expectations, and they were completely surpassed. I was kind of expecting some tents selling merch, some people biking along the ocean front, and maybe some live music, but we were delivered half pipes, skate parks, competitions, and Olympic level athletes. Everywhere we turned, there was something new and exciting going on. One of our favorite demonstrations of the day was the BMX. To be honest, I really don't know anything about BMX or skateboarding, so everything they did was incredibly impressive to me, but the backflips felt like they were really showing off. Hearing the resumes of these athletes was even more impressive. Gold and silver medals at the World Championships as well as Olympic competitions. I think I'm gonna have to start paying closer attention to these events in 2028. We spent a lot of time watching the halfpipe competition and were immediately invested because these competitors were all girls under 15 years old. Doing this event at all is incredibly impressive, but some of the tricks they were throwing, I can't imagine ever having the courage or confidence to try. This is another reason why young women are so inspiring to me. On the other side of the halfpipe was this pirate ship skate park, which seemed to be a freestyle event. These kids were also so talented, and the youngest competitor was only 6 years old. Again, cannot imagine ever doing this myself, and I was completely in awe. All of these events were held right on the beach, so they also had a skimboarding competition. Showing my ignorance again because I didn't know that you could be a professional skimboarder, and yet here I am watching them compete. I've always enjoyed watching surfing competitions, but dare I say this was more entertaining? The athletes are closer to the spectators, and it was really interesting to see what they could manage with the shore break. I don't need to say it again, but I was impressed. We had so much fun the first day, we decided to come back again, and thank God, because the weather the first few days of the festival precluded them from doing some of the events they had scheduled, and they were fitting them all in today. This included base jumping off the Hilton Hotel, which was absolutely wild to watch. I'm pretty sure the slacklining had also been affected by the high winds as well, so we got to see some of the races they were doing between buildings, and it's just amazing to watch these people practically running along these slacklines. The festival also had areas set up for public demos, so we got to jump on some slacklines ourselves and get a true appreciation for how difficult it is to stand on the line, let alone walk. And then on top of that, being that high up in the air? No, my fear of falling could never. These jet skiers were also out ripping in the waters, doing literal backflips, and I wasn't aware that was possible until I saw it before my very own eyes. I've seen people do things like this off ramps, but they were just seemingly using the waves and muscling themselves up into the air, so that blew my mind. And then, of course, we were back at the halfpipe to watch more of the qualifying rounds for the competition. I hate to say this because I always want everyone to do well, but watching these athletes fall and slide was almost as entertaining as watching them complete the trick successfully. The day finished off with a motocross demonstration, which was also pretty cool to see. Things like this really worry me to watch because it just seems like there's a lot that could go wrong. You fall on a bicycle, that's gonna hurt, but you fall on a motorcycle and that's gonna do some real damage, you know?